Brazil didn't just lose the headlines this week, they lost the argument. Because while everyone was busy watching the group of death, Japan walked into a stadium and put 4 goals past Tunisia. 4. Not lucky, not scrappy, surgical, and nobody's talking about it. Brazil gets the spotlight. Morocco gets the drama. Japan gets ignored. That's the mistake every football fan is making right now. And by the end of this video, you'll see why it's the biggest blind spot of the tournament. Here's the problem with how the world is watching this World Cup. Everyone's locked onto the same 3 storylines: Brazil's pressure, Morocco's golden generation, the so-called group of death drama. Meanwhile, Japan just delivered the most one-sided scoreline of the tournament so far, a 4-0 demolition. Not against a minnow nobody's heard of, against Tunisia, a team that grinds, that defends in numbers, that doesn't usually fall apart like that. Japan made them fall apart in 20 minutes. So why isn't this the story? Why is a flawless performance getting buried under Brazil hype that hasn't even been tested yet? That's exactly what we're breaking down today. Because if you're still ranking Japan below Brazil on potential, you're not watching the same tournament I am. Let's start with the number that should be impossible to ignore. 4 goals, 0 reply. That's not a result. That's a statement. Japan's best Asian performance of the entire World Cup so far, and it came against a side that's historically tough to break down. Now look at who did the damage. Ayase Ueda scored twice, including a goal in the 84th minute, when most teams are sitting back, protecting a lead, playing it safe. Japan didn't protect anything. They kept attacking. They kept hunting for more. That's not a team riding momentum. That's a team that smells blood and refuses to stop. Think about what that says about their mentality. Most sides, up 3-0 late in the game, switch off. Japan switched on. Ueda's 84th minute strike wasn't a mercy goal. It was a message. We're not here to survive group stage. We're here to dominate it. And here's the part that should worry every contender watching from the sidelines. This isn't a one-off. Japan reached the round of 16 back in 2022. They've already proven they can compete with elite nations on the biggest stage. Now they're not just competing, they're embarrassing teams. So if a 4-0 win against a defensively disciplined Tunisia side isn't enough to put Japan in the conversation, what exactly would be? Because what happens next isn't about the scoreline anymore. It's about who's actually building a team and who's just inheriting a reputation. Here's the assumption everyone's making, and it's wrong, that Brazil's talent automatically translates into tournament dominance. Talent doesn't win World Cups. Systems do. Chemistry does. Execution under pressure does. Brazil has flair. Nobody's denying that. But flair without cohesion is just a highlight reel waiting for a bad night. And Brazil hasn't faced a real test yet. They're being judged on potential, on reputation, on what the names on the back of the shirt suggest should happen. Japan is being judged on what actually happened on the pitch. Now compare midfields. Brazil's group runs on individual brilliance, moments of magic from players who can win a game on their own. Japan's group runs on connection. Kamada, Ueda, and Ito aren't playing as 3 separate talents. They're playing as one unit that already knows where the next pass is going before the ball even gets there. And here's the stat that should make Brazil fans uncomfortable. In qualifying, Japan's midfield trio outpassed Brazil's. Not matched, outpassed. That's not a small detail. Passing accuracy under pressure is the difference between a team that controls a match and a team that hopes the match goes their way. Brazil hopes, Japan controls. So ask yourself this: when the pressure ramps up in the knockout rounds, who do you trust more? A team full of individual stars who haven't been tested together? Or a team that's already shown it can suffocate an opponent for 90 minutes straight? That question gets a lot more uncomfortable in the next chapter. Now let's go where this gets explosive. Everyone keeps calling this the group of death because of Brazil and Morocco. But what if the real danger in this tournament isn't even in that group? What if it's sitting quietly in another bracket, building momentum nobody's tracking while the cameras stay pointed at the teams with the biggest names? That's exactly what Japan is doing. Think about historical patterns. The teams that go furthest in World Cups aren't always the ones with the most star power in June. They're the ones peaking at the right moment, building form, building belief, building fear in opponents who haven't faced them yet. Japan is doing that right now, in real time, while the football world looks the other way. A 4-0 win isn't just 3 points. It's a psychological weapon. Every team left in this tournament just watched what Japan can do to a well-organized defense. That tape doesn't disappear. Coaches will study it. Players will feel it. And fear, once it's planted, doesn't leave a dressing room easily. Here's the brutal truth. Brazil hasn't made anyone afraid yet. Japan already has. And if you think a result like like that is a coincidence, a flash in the pan, a one-game fluke. You haven't been paying attention to how this team has been built over the last 4 years. Because what's coming next isn't even about the football anymore. It's about who's actually paying attention to this tournament and who's just watching the highlights everyone else is talking about. Now here's what nobody is talking about. The entire football world has a bias problem. We've been trained for decades to assume that South American flair and European pedigree are the only paths to World Cup glory. Asian football gets filed under developing, improving, promising, never dangerous, never elite, never the favorite. That bias is costing every analyst, every fan, every prediction model the chance to see this tournament clearly. Japan just put 4 goals past a team that knows how to defend, with a midfield trio that's statistically outperforming Brazil's, and a forward scoring in the dying minutes because he refuses to stop hunting. That's not a developing team. That's a team that's already arrived, and the football world just hasn't updated its rankings to match reality. So here's the uncomfortable question this video is built to ask. Is Brazil actually the bigger threat right now, or are we just more comfortable believing that because it's the story we've always told? Because right now, the evidence says otherwise, and evidence doesn't care about reputation. Here's where I land. No hedging. Brazil is talented. Brazil is dangerous on their best day. But Japan is the team actually proving it match after match, while Brazil is still cashing checks on potential. If this tournament rewards form, cohesion, and fearless execution, and it always does, Japan isn't just a sleeper pick. They're the real threat hiding in plain sight. Write it down now, before the knockout stage makes it obvious to everyone else. Brazil is the name everyone expects to see deep in this tournament. Japan might be the team that actually gets there. If this take just changed how you're watching this tournament, hit subscribe. Football Keyframe breaks down the stories everyone else is missing every single day of this World Cup.